What's up? Dr. Swole here, MD bodybuilder, back with another video. So I got a question on my last YouTube video from Dino saying, can you do a video on fixing muscle size imbalances on different sides? And Evs weighed in as well and said, notice this is a problem of mine with most of my muscles. Weaker right quad, hamstring and glute, weaker left bicep, etc. Great question, and we're going to answer that today. I think uneven muscles and how to address them is an interesting topic in bodybuilding, and it's something that I wondered about earlier on in my training. Today we're going to talk about 5 reasons why you might have muscle imbalances and how to address them. Namely, we're going to talk about mind-muscle connection, technique, unaccounted volume, structural asymmetries, and lastly, genetics. All right, so first we're going to talk about the mind-muscle connection. This is basically how well you feel a muscle contracting during an exercise. And there's actually a recent study in 2018 showing that it probably has a role in hypertrophy. Now, in terms of how this causes uneven muscles, I think the most common reason would be your dominant versus non-dominant side. This is definitely something I've noticed in myself. For example, when doing one-arm rows, it's harder for me to feel my left lat contracting in the row than on my right side. Now, what's the solution for this? First of all, you can try activation work. So you can look this up, but there are drills that you can do for different muscle groups in order to develop that mind-muscle connection and help you cue the muscle when you're actually training. I generally recommend doing a mix of bilateral and unilateral work, but in this case, you might lean towards doing slightly more unilateral work. Now, the benefit of unilateral work is that it really lets you focus on both sides independently. So in my example of one-arm rows, if I'm doing them unilaterally, I can really focus on my left side to make sure I'm maximally stimulating the muscle. Now, I recommend that you should be matching sets on both sides. Just because one side's stronger doesn't mean you should be doing more reps. To make sure this happens, you might try starting with your weaker side when doing unilateral movements to make sure that you're matching those reps. Reason number 2, technique. This one's pretty easy to understand. Basically, you have some sort of asymmetry between your two sides when performing exercises that causes a better stimulus on one side. An example of this might be leaning to one side slightly in a squat. Notice that this doesn't necessarily apply to only bilateral exercises. To use our previous example, in a one-arm row, you might be pulling slightly deeper on one side. Now, how do you solve this? First of all, film yourself. I'm really big on filming yourself training because it's a great way to get instantaneous feedback and you don't need a coach. Now, there's a lot of good material online on proper lifting technique, so read up on that, understand the biomechanics of the movement and how to stimulate the target muscle. And then when you're in the gym, film yourself doing an exercise, compare the two sides, and look for asymmetries. If you can detect some sort of difference between the two sides, try to fix it, try again, film yourself, and repeat. Now, I personally think that you can make great strides in your technique just with a smartphone and a critical eye. But it's definitely also helpful to have someone else who's more experienced have a look at what you're doing. So you could get a friend who's well versed in the gym to watch you, or you could hire a coach. Reason number 3 is unaccounted volume. This includes any activity outside the gym that might be favoring one side. For example, you might be a tennis player and have a stronger, bigger, dominant arm. Or this might involve doing something at work where you use your two sides unevenly. Now for our solution. First of all, I'm going to say that you shouldn't be just jumping to adding more sets onto your weak side in order to correct your imbalance. I think the most common causes of imbalances are the first 2 reasons we talked about, and you should try to fix those deeper underlying issues before you just throw in more volume. However, in this case, where you're unintentionally training one side more than the other through outside the gym activities, I think you could consider adding more sets on your weak side. Okay, reason number 4 is structural asymmetry. Now, this goes deeper than technique, and the example I'm going to use is pelvic asymmetry. I spent some time working in a sports medicine clinic, and this was a common condition we saw. It's basically where your pelvis actually is out of alignment, which is caused by a number of reasons, but it can throw off your mechanics, change how you activate your muscles, and lead to other muscles compensating. To illustrate this, if you think about the pelvis leaning to one side, the spine ends up curving to compensate, which can subsequently change how your shoulder blades sit. It's pretty intuitive to see how these deformities might change the way you're able to activate those muscles and thus build them. Now, how do you know this is happening to you? You might notice this when you're filming yourself and you see asymmetries in your technique. You can also take pictures of yourself, for example, standing with your back facing the camera and taking a photo and comparing the two sides. These sorts of conditions might also manifest in actual symptoms, like having pain in one of your joints. Now, in terms of the solution for this, you should probably see a medical professional. So mention it to your doctor. You might benefit from physiotherapy, where they might do some mobility work and specific strengthening to correct the imbalances, or it might be helpful to see an actual sports medicine doctor. All right, lastly, reason number 5 is genetics. Now, I put this last because I think you should really be trying to troubleshoot all those other causes first before blaming an imbalance on genetics. Genetics do play a role in how your muscles look, but rather than the size of the muscle itself, this probably has more to do with the actual shape of your muscles. Now, in terms of the solution, there really is none for the shape of your muscles themselves. A common example of this is the shape and the way your abs are laid out on your midsection. Someone might complain that, oh, I have a 5-pack. I only have 3 divisions of my abs on one side and 2 on the other. Unfortunately, that isn't going to change regardless of how many asymmetric crunches you do. The shape of your muscles, however, can affect how big they look depending on the angle of viewing, and it's something to consider. That's all for now, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like the video and leave me a comment. This will help me to grow the channel so we can reach more people. If you haven't already, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.